Good evening and welcome to the Executive Elevation Experience. My name is Shireen Motara. I'm an executive coach to women leaders in the development sector and the social impact sector. I'm so thrilled today that we have an amazing guest, Françoise Moudouthe. Françoise is the CEO of the African Women's Development Fund, the AWDF, as many of us know it. Welcome, Françoise. I'm really pleased that you were able to join me this evening.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Sherry. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So, just to settle us in, why don't you tell us a little bit about the work that the African Women's Development Fund does?
Sure. So, the African Women's Development Fund, our work is based on the belief that there's a lot of patriarchal oppression, and the people who are best placed to do this work are the African feminists who are close to the communities, experience those oppressions. And so, what we do is to make sure that those feminist organizations, movements are well resourced to do that work of transformation. So, primarily, we raise funds, which we make available to these organizations and these feminist movements as grants, but we also provide a lot of support in terms of capacity strengthening and we in terms of knowledge building collectively and also movement building and making sure that we really work together, not just on our projects, but really together as a movement.
Great, thank you. And of course, you're my client in some way, and I'm supporting you on some of that amazing work that you are doing.
And you're
Tell
very good.
us, thank you. You're too kind. You just told me that you lived in France for 10 years, but I'm also wanting to know what did you do before and how does the work that you do now as a leader with the African Women's Development Fund continue to support your passion and purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that in the past 10 to 12 years, I've deliberately decided that I wanted to focus my choices, my career choices, um, to help me do something I'm really excited and passionate about, which is the health of feminist movements in Africa. I really think that a lot of the work that we do as feminists is being done in silos and, like we work on our projects. But I think that because the change we want to see is so massive, we can only go at it together. And so the movement is something that I personally feel very strongly about. So a lot of my career choices I've been deliberately to find ways to do it. So I spent a lot of time working on building strong partnerships in Africa for ending child marriage when I was working at Girls Not Brides as the Africa lead. I did some personal vulnerability focused experience rather than expertise focused work on elevating personal lived experiences of African feminists and really understanding what it means for us to live a feminist life on this continent. And so that's kind of work I was doing just before I joined, both consulting and also doing that work through a platform called the YAG. So which are really focusing on the experiences and the voices of African feminist leaders. So now I am doing this at AWTF. It's a different scale. It's a different angle because it's mostly about resources and financial resources. So it feels very different, but it's still very aligned. So I'm quite yeah. I've been here for almost 2 years.
Yes, and time flies, eh? I mean, I still sometimes speak about you as the new CEO of the AWDF, but I
I
mean,
think
it's
we need
been
to
two
stop
years
that.
already.
I'm not a new.
So, yeah. So tell me, I mean, the AWDF has has an impressive reputation, and it also had a strong founder, and of course, you coming in as a young leader in taking over the role as CEO. How have you made that role your own?
That's a fantastic question. I think AWGF's legacy and reputation is really a testament to the incredible work that the team has been doing for over 2 decades. and also the leadership of my predecessors. And I think it's interesting to see that I am the 30-year of a 22-year-old organization. So there's been established long leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came here, I have to say I was petrified. I was thinking, oh my God, they gave me the job. That was exactly what I was for a long time. Um, and one of the things that were most useful for me, one of our co-founders, Dr. Hilda Tadria, told me to not try to fill the shoes of Theo Soa, my predecessor. She was like, just bring your own shoes and fill those.
Mm-hmm.
That was very helpful for me. And I just decided to come and to try and really dig deep into why am I here. Like there were a lot of options, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
who could have done this job, and yet I got it. And so I was thinking, what is it about me? Because I was 35 when I got this job.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done any executive leadership before, so it's not really my technical leadership expertise that got me this job. And I really did a lot of conversation thing like where are we at this in this organization and what do we need? So I did a listening tour, very intense with every single person in the organization, with the board individually, with the movement partners, etc. And I left with a strong sense of where the organization is, and then I thought, okay, I think I can deal with this. And I just thought the only thing I know I can do is be myself, and that's what I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to do every day. It's not
Yeah.
always easy as it sounds, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm most trying to do because that's what I can own fully. I can't
Yes.
something I'm parroting or replicating if I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to just be myself.
Yes, and I think that's all I think I'm sure the people of AWDF ask for as well. Tell me about what priorities you've set for yourself in this role. Like when you exit the AWDF at some point, what is it that you want to look back on as the previous CEO of the organization?
I always say that one of my lines that the in terms of what guides me is I want for us to be an organization that does the feminist thing in the feminist way. I very much believe that we are a feminist fund, not just because we were um, founded by three feminists, not just because we move money towards feminist movement. We have to be feminists as an organization fully. And that means expanding the scope of our work, the ways we do our work, and owning some of those things that we talk about inclusivity, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and things like I don't know, diversity, things like being fully political and have our political stances as feminists being more clear. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the thing is as you dig, it keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that is something I strongly believe in, that AWTF can afford, because of that incredible legacy, to go all the way in
Mm-hmm.
terms of owning our feminist identity. So I hope that I can try move things in those directions.
Yes. And as you speak about, doing feminist things in a feminist way, tell me about what you are learning about leadership as a feminist and an African feminist at that.
Um, where do I start? I think I've learned more in the past 2 years that I've learned like in the previous 10,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. And I've learned the first thing I've learned is that being a leader is not something that you declare, right? I I think that there's no leadership without people choosing you as a leader, right? So I've learned not to assume that my position gives me leadership. I've
Mm-hmm.
also learned that leadership and learning are not opposite things. So you don't have to learn everything before you can feel comfortable leading. which is something that I was a bit nervous about because I literally said, "Oh, they gave me this, but I'm just a baby feminist. How do they want me to understand that? Actually, I can learn. I can keep learning. I learn with the team. I learn with our partners, and so I think that leadership is constant learning. And I think the moment I think I'm going to start saying I don't need to learn anymore. I'm going to be such a loser. So I think, yeah, that's the second lesson. And I think maybe the last thing I've learned is that I think leadership and management are not the same. And I think that especially in feminist organizations and social justice movements in general, management type leadership is being presented as a reward for all the type of leadership that we've had in our lives, experiencing in careers. It's just not the same, and we need to get each other and get ourselves the support to understand the difference and to learn on both parts.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a profound point. And it brings me to my second question, which puts the first question in a different way. And it's, what are you learning about feminism as a leader?
Uh, I'm learning that feminism means different things to different people, and that there's nothing to gain from feminist Olympics approach to feminism, as in my feminism is better than yours. And so I'm learning a lot about understanding what makes my feminism different, or my understanding of feminism different than others. And I'm learning from the core and to find the red lines where we really need to confront and where we have to find ways. And I think both exist. Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that I think make me a relatively good leader is that I love to listen. It's not just that I am good listening. I love listening to people. And so I think that we've learned a lot about feminism, that if we assume instead of listening, we'll just be bickering to get against each other instead of moving forward and doing the change we want to do together. And so I'm learning a lot about that.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've been listening to a podcast by Gender at Work, which has been talking about the implosion of women's rights and social justice organizations, and how the whole issue of feminism gets challenged in the organizational context. So while we are good at doing it externally, internally it often is a struggle. Talk to me a little bit about how, as a leader, you are bringing others on board in AWDF, and what kind of surprises have you had so far in your leadership journey?
I think for me, it's not a surprise, but it was a realization, which is everything that you see in society and in movements, you see in your organization. And so, even as if whatever the organization identify as, people who work with us, all of us working together in a team, we bring whatever we experience, whatever are the foundations, our beliefs, all of this comes in our organizations. But we do choose an organization that has a feminist goal and that aims to have feminist ways of working. And so I think that for me, the biggest surprises was that of there's a lot of room for negotiation. There's a lot of room for discussion. And I think it can be quite exhausting to try to systematically accommodate that. And so I think it's working with everyone to really say, okay, what do we need to be negotiating? We can't negotiate everything about feminism in every conversation. But I do think that we need to have a lot of clarity about what we're about and what we're not, what there's room for and what there isn't. And I think that is the negotiation I'm ready to. But I'm not ready to do it every single week, which is where I started. And I was just like, wait, can't get anything done here in those ways. Yeah, and I've also been, I want to say, a bit surprised by the fact that so those same tensions that exist in society, especially now around feminism, Of course, they exist in the organizations, but we can't deal with them in the way we deal with them outside, right? We can't deal with our colleagues the way we shoot down people on Twitter. Like it's just different kinds.
Yes,
So
yes.
I think there's a necessity to be so thoughtful at all times in ways that we are not systematically outside, because at the end of the day we are in the same team and we make change happen together.
Yes. And I mean, in terms of that, of course, being the CEO does give you a certain level of hierarchical power, right? You can't get away from that. And we know that as feminists, that power dynamic is the big thing that we're trying to fight against. So I'm interested to see, how do you negotiate that power element in your role in the organization in a way that still makes you feel truly as truly acting as a feminist leader, but also that others are understanding that, that they, to some extent, there has to be that kind of power relationship in an organizational context.
Yeah. So you see, I think one of the things I most struggle with um, in this job is the power, especially, and not actually so much within the team, but mostly because of AWDF's visibility, its influence, and yeah, and we are funder, right? So, as somebody who was doing the work of pulling intimate stories from feminists on the continent, literally from one day to another, the people who I was talking to about the most vulnerable things in their lives are people who are now seeing me as somebody who can decide whether or not the organization gets money. For me, that has been the most difficult, because that is not, when I try to be myself, this is really hard in that and so navigating conferences and all of those spaces where I can't just be myself, Françoise. I have to be Françoise from AWDF, and those situations make those two people a bit different. But so that's a big thing around the power within the organization. I think, and I present things a lot less about power and a lot more about responsibility. Because for me, as a team leader, the power is the other side of the responsibility coin. And I think that for me, framing things this way for myself, for my colleagues, and then insisting on shared responsibility, open the entry point towards shared leadership and shared power, for me,
Yes.
I think is very important, because wanting power without wanting the responsibility is something I just can't entertain. I can't entertain that, because actually the most heavy weight of power is the responsibility that comes with it. So I want all of us to share power, and I think we do quite a bit of that. We try anyway in the organization, but I always am asking to think about those two sides. That power and responsibility are very close, working together.
Yes, yes, indeed. And how has that happened for you in terms of bringing your colleagues on board? So you as an executive team, what are the things that you have done to make sure that you are able to have that shared responsibility as an executive team, but then also as a management team?
I have to say I'm still working on it. One of the first things that I did when I joined was, for example, we have like these retreats that we organize in the team several times a year. And like the first retreat, I was asking, instead of having one person or one department doing it every single year, can we ask a group of six team members, none of them in the management team, to take the lead and just do the agenda, and set the tone, and of course, they should ask like, what are the main objectives, and let them run with it. That was in my second month. Um, I experienced a little bit of, I don't want to say resistance, but uh, really, are we doing this? And we did do it. And it was great. It was fantastic. I think for me, some of the things that I want to do is um, a lot of what I do is tell people, "Are you sure you need to ask me that? Like, are you sure you don't need my permission to do your job? You don't need my permission to like leave." And so I think I've tried to do a lot of creating spaces where people can just do what they are good at, and especially in people outside management. And for all of us who are in the management team, it's really also trying to build the trust and and the self confidence. So the work we do with tutoring is also
Yeah.
about that, making sure that anybody who has any supervisory roles in the organization is equipped, with and then, but also that we can all of us together decide for ourselves what do we mean by feminist leadership in our organization. It doesn't change every time there's a new CEO. I don't want the understanding of feminist leadership to be mine. Like I have mine, but is it the one that the organization needs? And can it be something that I can improve? I don't think so. So we need to create together who we want to be, and that's where I think shared responsibility comes from. Because if we create together, we own together.
Yes, indeed. So, have you had to deal with any resistance, and how has that been?
I've learned a lot about resistance. That resistance is not always um, opposition, confrontation. So I've not recognized resistance as first, actually, and I also learned not to always doubt resistance. Also learned that I've learned to see that actually sometimes resistance is being comfortable. Maybe sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's lack of understanding. And I think one of the big things I've learned is that I came here with a change agenda. This was very clear from the board. You're coming as you, like so different from everybody who's here before, because we want you to change a couple of things. And I think what I've learned is that resistance is an excellent source of information. So I've learned not to resist resistance, but to listen to it and hear what it is the symptom of. It can be, you know, it can take a lot of breathing. I
Yes.
think, uh,
Yes.
but at the moment I turned to trying to really listen. What is this act of resisting saying? I learned, for example, one of the things is you can't advocate for a change agenda without recognizing what you're building on. For example, from us, the fantastic legacy that I've came and inherited. I assume that everybody knows that I think EW has done amazing things, and I respect that. And I realize actually, even as you assume, remind people of what you're thinking or what your baseline is. This is something I've learned from resistance, for example. And I think that, so I've learned to embrace resistance. I don't love it. I'm not going to lie to you, Shireen. But I respect it. I listen to it, and I work with it instead of against it.
Great. And I think that that shows a lot of also self-awareness. So when we having to deal with issues of that nature, being understanding of the fact that this is not about me.
Yeah.
It's about possibly educating me about something that I may need to take action on, but it's not personal. I don't have to take it personally.
Yes.
And responding in the way you have responded then helps us in moving forward rather than getting stuck in why are they doing this to me kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes. I don't, I mean, I am very lucky, I think, that I don't have a very, very big ego. So I think. So I think that a lot of the things that that I could have been I could have taken personal. I typically don't take a lot of things personal. So that just goes past. I'm glad I'm that way because I could spend a lot of time doing this in this way, but I don't. But I have to say that something about the way our movements and our organizations are built that is maybe used to what I call big madam leadership, and expect it. from you and sometimes fight you when you're not giving it, even if they don't like it. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
it in organizations, I've seen it in movements, I've seen it in networks. And I think as leaders, we need to separate ourselves from it. But it's not that easy because sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like where you're seeing change needs to happen, even people who agree with you are just not so used to it. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to do a bit of, fighting people to get them what they actually want, and
Yes.
what we all want together. And yeah, it's. I mean, it's been here to. It's been a stretch. I've learned so much,
Mm-hmm.
and those are some of the lessons indeed.
Indeed. And we're having some of the comments where there's major agreement with you around the fact that power and responsibility can't be separated. And also that one's position doesn't necessarily make you a leader.
Yeah.
So you can show up as a leader wherever you are. And I am also one of the people that advocate for that. Lead with courage wherever you are. You don't need hierarchical positions to be able to do that. We have 4 minutes left, and I wanted to talk to you about self care and collective care because, of course, for the work of the AWDF, that is important as a feminist funder, but it's also an important aspect for the organization itself. What I'd like to ask you is how do you take care of yourself, and where do you find support to help you as a leader?
Yeah. This is a question people ask me. I don't do a lot. I don't
Mm-hmm.
do enough to take care of myself. I think it's because I'm so sensitive to that responsibility. I just don't want to mess it up. So
Mm-hmm.
I put a lot of energy, I put a lot of hours, I put a lot of, honestly, my health, my family time. That's not really good. But what I'm also
Mhm,
hearing from all, if I go back to my journals, and um, I think that for me, I'm learning to, even as instinct, like intuitively, I want to do more work, is actually
mhm,
when I need to stop. When
mhm,
my body is telling me stop, I need to hear it. Every time I haven't, I've paid for it. So I
mhm,
think the only real way I'm taking care of myself is I start to listen to my body, to my emotions a little bit. And when I do, every time what I'm looking for is connection.
mhm,
I need to connect with my people, my family, my loved ones, and my feminist sisters. And so,
mhm,
to answer the latter part of your question, I find, I have a coach. I need a coach. Everybody needs a coach who's leading. But I also have an amazing group of African feminists I can turn to for advice, for rants, for
mhm,
whatever. And this for me is the deepest, most useful connection I need to
mhm.
survive in this,
Yeah.
and also to thrive. So yeah, I think that this is super super useful. People who've been there or not,
Mhm,
or who know you, who knew you before all of these expectations, and people
mhm,
who believe in you and understand your values. I
mhm.
think for me, those are my people, and they have been amazing, and they've kept me.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And so you shouldn't say that you don't do much because I think just you doing the things that give you energy and that support you a little, you can do a bit more. But having a coach, connecting to others, stopping work when you have to stop work, I think are great things that you are already doing to kind of take care of yourself. So as we conclude, what advice would you give other leaders, particularly feminist or African women leaders, around stepping into executive roles? What advice would you have wanted before you stepped into
Yeah,
your role that you can share with them?
I think that what I wish I'd heard when I started was don't spend too much time doubting yourself.
Mhm,
Uh, I think, especially as younger leaders come in many spaces, you are the first off, you know, first. For me, I'm the first francophone in this situation. I'm the first younger, and in many spaces. I think for me, the biggest thing is nobody's giving leadership roles like candy. Like if you're here, you've earned it. There's a reason why you're here. Find that reason, put it in a post-it, put it on a t-shirt. Remind yourself why you are here and what for, and stick to that. I keep doubting myself even now, and I keep telling myself, don't spend too much time doubting yourself, because it's just there's nothing comes out of it. I
Yeah.
think you should question yourself, but don't doubt your strengths. Doubt your learning areas, but don't doubt your strengths. It's just a waste of energy. And it's very confusing for your teams, I think, as well. So I'm
Wow.
learning that.
Yeah.
I keep learning that. I'm still learning. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we all have those moments, on an ongoing basis. The way patriarchy has conditioned us so well that, it almost comes naturally to have to question ourselves all the time. But I agree with what you say. You see it for what it is and you let go of it. And you know that, you were brought into this role because you have something that is needed for that role. The doubts will always be there, but never let them overshadow, what you are bringing, the strengths that you are bringing, wherever you are.
Yeah. That's what I keep telling myself, at least twice a week. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Francoise. This time was way too short. Everyone is enjoying the conversation, and I think they're not happy that we're ending so soon. I really appreciate that you've made the time to have this conversation with me. I think it's been enlightening for all of us who have been listening. And I appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability. I think that's what we as women leaders need to see and hear more of in our own journeys as leaders. And it's these stories that help other women leaders, navigate their own journeys. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I always
You're
wanted to
welcome.
come, could never make the time, so I'm so happy. And I look forward to catching up with the other ones as well.
Sure. Thanks so much. And thank you to everyone who has joined the conversation. And thank you for all the meaningful comments as well. Francoise will have a look at some of the comments and we'll see how we can respond to some of them. We look forward to seeing you in another 2 weeks when we have another leader that we will talk to about their executive journey. Thank you for joining us and have a good evening.
Thank you.